for us.
Same here.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Meenakshi Sharma, Director General, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. Ms. Shreya Guha, Principal Secretary, Tourism, Art and Culture, Government of Rajasthan. Shri Vishal Kumar Dev, Commissioner, Secretary, Tourism Department, Sports and Youth Services Department, Government of Odisha. Dr. Suri, Past President, FICCI and Chairperson, FICCI Tourism Committee. The co-chairs, all distinguished panelists. Good afternoon and welcome to all of you on this webinar on rebooting Indian travel and tourism. We have a distinguished panel of speakers. In fact, Mr. Vishal Dev will remember that one of our last engagements before the lockdown was meeting in Odisha at the famous resort that you created in Konark. Thank you very much for that opportunity. The focus actually here will, how can we reimagine and reboot the sector ourselves to survive and revive and then of course thrive. I thank all of you and all the distinguished speakers and panelists for agreeing to join this webinar. We are really delighted to have Ms. Meenakshi Sharma, who has been extremely supportive and leading us throughout the crisis. Also, Ms. Shreya Guha, who has been hand-holding the tourism industry of Rajasthan, has been on many webinars with us earlier. So thank you so much for this. We are pleased to have Shri Vishal Dev in his vision and leadership in implementing effective strategies on the ground in Odisha, actually well known. He is also leading the central relief operations in the state. And given that a cyclone is going to land shortly, thank you very much for being with us. I would just say that the importance of this sector is obvious. The session will be moderated by Mr. Ashish Kumar, Co-Chair FICCI Travel Technology Committee. And may I now request Dr. Suri to kindly set the tone for the discussions. Dr. Suri, thank you for leading this discussion. And over to you.
Namaskar, everyone. Thank you, Dilip. You've actually been able to name all the very special guests that we've got here. But I'd also like to welcome all the participants who have actually logged in and joined in to be part of this webinar. Of course, a very special thanks to our distinguished guests, Vishal ji, Shreya ji, and Meenakshi ji, for actually taking out time and participating with something which I think is absolutely crucial. I don't want to get into numbers. I think we all know very well what the travel and tourism industry does for India and globally, as a matter of fact, whether it's 10% of GDP or 12% of the total employed workforce, the ripple effect that it has. And we firmly believe that tourism and travel would have or could have or can be the torchbearer for actually reigniting the Indian economy. We were very, very patiently waiting for something to come our way. And I must not hide my disappointment. I want to be very frank and open about it, that we are extremely disappointed that nothing was even mentioned about us. There were some very basic things that we had asked for. We all understand that the government of India doesn't have huge coffers. However, there were some simple things that we had requested. For example, an extension of the moratorium, an extension of our working capital, a one-time restructuring without degrading our assets, some support from the states, whether it was a waiver of our statutory payments, be it property tax, some special rates for our electricity and our water. All of that was really not going to hit the pocket, and it was not going to be a dent on the exchequer. We did request for some support on paying wages, and we understand that's not a possibility. However, the other mentioned small, in my opinion, support to this industry would have gone a very, very long way. We're clearly declining. We are falling like nine pins, and it's from top to bottom. Of course, the country, the industry, it actually has a very, very wide range. It begins from the top and goes all the way down to the tea stall that is on the side of the highway. So disappointment there. We were hoping to survive with the help of the government. Perhaps the states can help us out now because the government has given a fairly large chunk to the states. So we will reach out to the states as well. But had we been able to do what we wanted to do, which is really survive, then I firmly believe that tourism would have been the torchbearer for reigniting the economy of India. And it was domestic tourism that we were looking for. I'm not writing off international arrivals. That will happen. It will happen as time goes by because we will take advantage of all those, the travelers who were going particularly to China to all come our way. Unfortunately, I think other countries are going to take a lead on that, but it will happen. However, it was the domestic tourism that we were all actually very, very positive about. In fact, we in FICCI, we had a very comprehensive document which we presented to the Ministry of Tourism, whereby we were actually explaining how domestic tourism could take us to the next level. We're all grappling. We all know that every industry is facing its own challenges, but it was travel and tourism that will bring that ripple effect, as well as that feeling of that positivity, which is lacking right now, the feel good factor, which is really missing in all of us. We're all feeling, down and depressed. And it was this that was going to take us forward. We were looking at hoping that the government would incentivize the domestic tourism. But what I can see right now is that there are borders within the country. The states, unless the states begin to open up their borders to each other, that is going to take a little bit of a time. However, it is not all doom and gloom. As Shreya ji said, we all shouldn't be so dejected. We are resilient. Indians and Indian entrepreneurs by nature are very, very resilient. We will perhaps struggle out of this as well. But really, on this platform, we had actually planned when we were doing this webinar, we were going to go full throttle on how was it that we were going to actually be the torchbearers. Very disappointed, however, still there. And we still feel that things can come and it can be done, and it has to be done with the support of whether the central government or the state government. So not leaving it on a very depressed note, like I mentioned earlier on when we started, that I have this funny expression on my face. I could burst out crying or I could burst out laughing. I don't know which way I'm actually going. Having said that, let's get on with this webinar, and I'm sure something will come out which we can actually fall back on or hold on to, so that Indian travel and tourism industry still becomes the torchbearer of reigniting the Indian economy. Thank you very much for all joining us. It's a pleasure to have all of you, and thank you for taking out your time. It's over to you, Ashish.
Thank you, Dr. Suri, and thank you for setting the tone. And thank you, Mr. Dilip Shenoy and FICCI for giving us a platform in such a crucial time in history, a term and an event which we can quite easily describe as a black swan event. Having said that, I now would invite Shri Vishal Kumar Deva, who's the Commissioner cum Secretary Tourism and Sports and Services. So,
I think there's a problem with the sound on your side, Ashish.
Government of Odisha, and who has been credited sports and with great initiatives. Are you there? Yeah.
Ashish, I couldn't hear you. Shall I start?
Yeah, please do comment. Something went wrong with the audio, but please do. Welcome, sir.
Thanks a lot. For the last almost 2 months, we've all been completely engulfed by COVID. So I'm not really going to dwell on that, but suffice to say that I think there's a realization that all of us need to live with this problem for some time at least, and we need to get used to a new normal. I would like to introduce myself personally also. Apart from the designation that I carry, I'm a passionate traveler, a very avid traveler. I am the vacation planner of not only my own family, but of my extended family and friends as well. And I think if I hadn't joined the IS, I would perhaps have been running a small boutique hotel somewhere in the hills close to Dehradun, which is my hometown. Therefore, it's a matter of great pleasure that I'm in the hallowed company of trailblazers and stars like Dhruv, Dipak, and I think I would not really like everyone for paucity of time. It's a delight to be here sharing this platform with you all, and thank you so much, FICCI, for organizing this webinar. There are, I believe, 3,000 people who've logged in, and before I tell about what we should be doing or what we in Odisha have planned, let me just brief the audience about what Odisha is, because yes, it's one of the states of India, but it's a state which suffers from poor visibility. It's a state which is not heard of very often. So let me just give a very brief introduction before moving on to the topic. Over the last 20 years, Odisha has transformed from a poor and a backward state to a state which is an industrial leader today, to a state which is considered a very progressive and a very well-governed state. Over the last decade and a half, we have grown at a rate which is higher than the national average growth rate consistently. We are the #1 state in terms of converting industrial proposals into industrial investments. We just tipped Maharashtra in November last year. We account for 20% of India's steel and 54% of India's aluminium. And we are the best state in terms of implementation of a large number of schemes like rural roads, rural housing, primary education. The only state in the country to have actually doubled farmers' incomes when so many others are still talking about it. And the state which has reduced its poverty by the highest percentage margin over the last 10 years. So these are figures from the erstwhile Planning Commission of late Niti Aayog. So, and these are all officially documented. We are also considered one of the best managers of disasters. We've been recognized by the United Nations. And we're faced with one right now, apart from COVID. We have the cyclone Ampan, which is going to be hitting us tomorrow. When we had just about recovered from the cyclone Fani, which had come last year in May, around the same time. So cyclones have almost become an annual affair with us, unfortunately. And so much energy, time, and resources are kind of wasted in just coming back to where you were. So that's one of the problems that we have to live with. The other problem is that the cyclones always hit the coastal area, which is the backbone of our tourism. As far as Odisha's tourism is concerned, we offer a bouquet of experiences, which I think very few states in the country can match. We are famous for our heritage and history, our spiritual heritage and history. We're known as the land of temples. We're famous for the Kalinga style of architecture, which is known all over the world. We have a 482-kilometer coastline, which has some of the most beautiful and pristine beaches in the country. The Chilka Lake, which happens to be the second largest brackish water lake in the world, houses Irrawaddy dolphins, the only place in the Indian subcontinent where you can see them. Bhitar Karika, one of our 90 wildlife parks, is famous for olive ridley turtles, which, as some of you would be knowing, come to only about 3 places in the world: Costa Rica, Mexico, and Odisha. We have 39% of our land covered by forests, and the good thing is that it has been increasing over the years, unlike other states where it's going down. Ecotourism and wildlife therefore happen to be one of our strong points. We have a large number of nature camps, and 62% of our, 23% of our population is tribal, which is divided across 62 diverse groups, and therefore ethnic tourism is also a very strong component. And we're also famous for our arts and crafts, filigree, dokra, our textiles, Sambalpuri, Pipli artwork, all of which you would have heard of. So this was about a very brief introduction to Odisha, and let me now come to what we are planning to do in Odisha, or what I think we should be doing. I have colleagues from other states. The Secretary Tourism Rajasthan is there, and DG Tourism Government of India. I think one of the first points that I would like to make is that moving forward, we should think of a strategy wherein states don't compete with each other, but we complement each other. Let there not be a rat race. I think each state has its own unique advantages and strengths. And there is an opportunity where we can think of building upon these advantages, leveraging them, and moving forward. At a macro level, if you look at it about how to approach the problem, we always think of a short term, a medium term, and a long term perspective. And I think FICCI's done a great job. They've come out with this term called survive, revive, and thrive. So I understand survive is the immediate term program, revive is the medium term, and thrive is the long term. So when we're talking about the survival, I think it's primarily about survival, revival of sector employability, and basically about reducing the burden. So what we've done is we formed an interministerial committee wherein we have recommended for waiver and deferment of statutory dues and payments like property tax, electricity bills, excise license fees, etc. And we are talking of moving from a minimum demand load billing to a billing based on actual consumption. I think that has been the demand of the industry, and they say that it'll bring about it'll give them a lot of help and support. On the, again, when we talk of reducing the burden, moratoria on liabilities, which is primarily loan repayments, is another aspect that we need to look at. And enhancing the availability of credit, basically soft loans for working capital for payment of salaries, which has become a big issue with the hospitality industry. And on the livelihoods front, we are thinking of giving a lump sum assistance to guides, photographers, boatmen who've lost their livelihood. We've done this last year also when Cyclone Phony hit us, and we plan to do that again. On the medium term, which I think corresponds to the revive factor of FICCI, we're looking at business reforms. We're talking of making all licenses valid for 5 years with random inspections, rather than people having to apply every year, which is again very cumbersome and also leads to some harassment. We all know that the focus area, at least for the next 2 to 3 years, is going to be on domestic tourism. And I was talking about states tying up with each other. We've done one with Gujarat some time back. As far as Odisha goes, what we've realized is that considering the people may have trains and airlines, it's boat tourism from state cities which are nearby. So we're working on coming out with itineraries from cities like Jamshedpur, Ranchi, Visakhapatnam, etc. We're also talking of Odisha cuisine-based promotion of Odisha tourism. Odia cuisine is something which is not much heard or talked about, but it's again extremely healthy. It derives from the food that is served to Lord Jagannath, and extremely healthy, very little oil, etc. On the policies front, again, in the medium term, we are coming out with 4 very specific policy. One, of course, we are revising our tourism policy, and I can tell you that it's going to be one of the most progressive policies, and will offer perhaps the best incentives to investors in tourism and hospitality projects. We are looking at coming out with a policy specifically for encouraging and promoting homestays for heritage properties, for modernizing our boats. So we are planning to give an assistance to all our boatmen to convert the wooden boats into fiber boats, and 90% of the amount required would be given by us. We would love to have some hospitality brands come and set up hotels and resorts in Odisha. And let me renew my request to Dr. Suri on this once again. Ma'am, it's a proposal which has been pending for quite some time. We have, of course, we've also done some prioritization at our level because we have about 360 places which are classified as tourist destinations. So we've brought them down to 13, which is going to be a priority for us. And we plan to spruce up our tourist destinations across these 13 priority sectors to improve the quality of experience that tourists get. In the medium term, again, we are planning to scale up the glamping projects. We had done one in Konark in November, December last year on similar lines as the Run of Kutch Utsav. It was hugely successful. And we have some beautiful places, some breathtaking places where we plan to replicate them. Of course, we'll be coming out with them very shortly. We have a few wildlife parks. I mentioned about Bhitarkanika. Again, we're looking at developing world-class infrastructure there. And we're looking at introducing river cruises and houseboats in the state of Odisha. As far as long-term initiatives go, we have a few very large projects lined up. One of our, and we plan to give out islands for development of tourism infrastructure, including hotels, resorts, etc. We have a wonderful Buddhist circuit, again, not much talked about, but there is a plan to engage a world-class consultant for helping us master plan that. And a project called Shamuka, which is just adjoining Puri, separated by a river over 1,000 acres. It will perhaps be the largest tourism project in the country. These are the things that we have thought we need to do. And I look forward to listening to others about what they're planning to do as far as getting the sector back on track is concerned. Thank you so much.
Ashish?
Are the things that we have thought we need to do, and I look forward to listening to others about what they're planning as far as getting the sector back on track. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Ashish.
Yeah, sorry, I've had some internet issues, but thank you so much. Hello. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, we can hear you
Sorry.
now.
You know, the net's been bad. May I invite Dipak Deva, who's the co-chairman FICCI Tourism Committee and managing director of SITA, TCI and Distant Frontier to come in. Over to you, Deep.
Thank you, Ashish, and good afternoon. I'll speak about the inbound business. Is that clear now? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So the two factors that are important for inbound business to bounce back, the first, of course, is for both the source market and us to recover enough for air traffic to resume. And second, we will need to understand the psyche of the end customer in our source markets, as their decision to travel will vary based on how hard the virus hits them in comparison to India. So our source markets will react in different ways, and this is important. For example, the Japanese will be cautious and wait for their governments to advise them on how safe a destination is before they take a travel decision. The Americans will stay in the US for now, go to places like Hawaii, and domestic tourism will be the mainstay of the US economy. This is what we are hearing, and we are speaking to experts and getting all this information. The Australians will lock themselves in. They already want this little, big balloon between them and New Zealand, and they will not step out for quite a while. The Europeans will do Europe for some time, but will be the first to exit Europe and go to safe places. That's always been the case. And Russians, as we all know, are carefree travelers and will fly on charters, flights to Vietnam, to Thailand and Goa in droves, and they will need to get out of Russia when the winter arrives. So let's talk about trends. We've been speaking to our clients who tell us that we should expect boom in road trips. We've been talking about this. I think Deep was amongst the first people also to talk about this. Beach holidays, as expected, will be up, but a lot in luxury resorts. So what we are hearing is people are calling in and saying, are there deals available for Maldives next year, Seychelles, Hawaii, those kind of destinations. Active trips, a lot of walking and cycling trips are going to pick up. And family holidays, there's going to be a Zoom effect. People are talking about where they're all going to go as a family on holiday. FIT travel will start first, then smaller groups. I think the days of large busloads of people is over at least till the time of the vaccine. And we hear that safaris in Africa are trending. But what is worrisome is what is the perception of India right now? We spoke to a large number of our customers and asked them this question. And this is what they are telling us. Trust is an issue. People are not convinced that the data on corona is accurate. No one wants to be quarantined in India, and they don't believe that we have the required infrastructure. Labor migration and the related misery has hit headlines internationally, and people do not want to visit a country that is treating its people so badly. This is an issue right now. And social distancing, people believe, is impossible to follow in India. I'm just telling you what we heard from a bunch of our customers. So, given all this, what do we want from the government? Although the sector did not get anything in the stimulus package, we need to ask the government to consider the following. Most tour operators have issued vouchers to customers which can be used for booking a holiday in the future rather than refunding them the money. The client has a choice to decide where they will use this credit in the coming year. India should seize this opportunity and incentivize such travelers by offering them free visa fees, free entrance to monuments, or whatever else is controllable within the government's budget and ideas. We need to plan targeted campaigns for revival based on the psyche of the source markets. This is very important. They need, the government needs to reassure the end customer that by talking about the success, and by they should talk about the success of destinations like Kerala and Goa in managing controlling the outbreak. Especially talk about Kerala, which has been held as a benchmark along with Vietnam by the Economist magazine. For this, we also need to ensure a good PR agency worldwide. For 10 years, we have been demanding this, and it is a must that it is implemented now. They will also need to redefine the role of their foreign offices. It's an 80s concept that just doesn't work anymore. We need strong outposts for revival. So to end, I would like to leave a question for all of us to think about. Will the planet's health be as urgent to travelers who are now focused on preserving personal health? In a germophobic world, will single-use plastic make a comeback? Will sustainable tourism take a backseat? If that be the case, 10 years of hard work in sustainable tourism may be reversed if we don't find intelligent solutions to this problem. So with that, thank you, Ashish. That's what I had to say for today.
And Executive Director of Mayfair Hotels and Resorts. Can you hear me, Mr. Mohapatra? Mr. Mohapatra? Mr. Mohapatra, over to you.
Hospitality and tourism was the first one to get hit by this pandemic and will be the last one to recover. Under the current circumstances and recent developments, we appeal that tourism ministry should support the industry and upgrading the factor that will boost the travel, speed of the travel time, and help in marketing domestic sector. Having associated with this industry for last 3 decades, I have seen many downturns, recessions, and calamities, but never before that had been such uncertainty. This situation is very challenging, and so far we hardly have any concrete solution to this crisis. Tourism, we all know that tourism creates huge number of skilled and semi-skilled jobs, not only in local hotels or restaurants or catering business, but also in other allied and related fields like transport, retailing, artisan, designers, heritage guides, etc. It is estimated that this crisis would bring 70% of a total of 5.5 crore workforce unemployed. which means around 3.5 to 3.8 crore people will be jobless. This magnitude of jobless would be adverse on this overall economy of the country. Indian hospitality sector is already in the loss around 4.5 billion revenues due to COVID-19, with policies like work from home and no travel or travel only when unavoidable in place, large scale of cancellation, in particularly from the corporate, MICE and leisure segments, which started from mid-February. He has resulted huge revenue losses even if the lockdown is lifted. The situation would still continue to be remain low at least for next upcoming 2 quarters. But having said so, I still believe that our industry will bounce back soon. Life and business may not be the same again, but who knows, it may be even better. Every challenges bring with us it's a many learning and lessons, and so will happen post COVID. Among other, the biggest learning it has for us that it is of a preparedness. As far as what will be the new normal for travel and tourism, I think it would be a 5 basis. First one is the safety and hygiene and sanitation would determine travel decisions of the guest and brand here would have to ensure adherence to the precautionary measures of the highest standards to win the faith of the guest. Post COVID-19, every property would need to be revisited, revamped its standard operating procedures concerning housekeeping, food and beverage operations, hygiene standards in spa, gyms, overall sanitation of the property, encouraging the minimal contacts and safe distancing. The technology is going to play big things like next post COVID. Technology intervention from the new now on would play a major role in hotel industry. Any guest will have more trust on the brand that has installed automated minimal contact processes. Hotels will have it to look at integrating their functions with online customers booking platforms where registration forms, booking for dining, gyms, etc. can be done online. Online check-ins and ordering, QR-based identification and access systems, paperless billing and settlements, etc. shall be new normal henceforth. And as soon as it's safe to travel, brands will reach out the deferred and cancellation bookings, target domestic travels. Another potential segment shall be earlier outbound travelers who are likely to be travel abroad shall be contributed to domestic tourism. Given the less MICE movement, hotel will need to be reviewed sales and marketing strategy. Henceforth, there will be more focus on the social functions over the corporate events. The outbound MICE through film shootings, destination wedding, corporate event will look for destination within the country and attractive incentive package for the segment needs to be looked into. With seat restriction in air, train travels, self-drive holidays will be the future in domestic tourism where destination with motorable distance will be preferred. Marketing initiative to be taken from government and stakeholders. Campaign by the State Tourism Board for the attracting domestic tourists across the country. Each and every state should conduct road shows in major Indian cities to attract the domestic tourists. While campaigning emphasis to be given to promote the destination in terms of social distancing, sanitations, contactless services, hygiene, safety and security measures, which are being implemented keeping in view of COVID. State government should also come up with the hygiene certificate for the travel agents and guides, transports, hotels, guest houses, homestay, etc. Highlights this while conducting the road shows. A well thought out, Incredible India campaign to be launched by central government, keeping the view of promoting domestic tourists, film production, MICE and weddings. This campaign to be done in the form of large exhibitions, inviting the stakeholder with the attractive incentive, statutory and legal support. This is from my side. Thank you.
analysis. And I would now like to move on to Ankush Nijhawan, who's the co-chairman of FICCI Travel Technology Committee and founder of Travel Boutique Online.
Ashish, thank you. Yeah. So Ashish, I'll be talking and representing the small and medium travel agents which work with us and obviously with my other colleagues. They're about, and I'm covering about 450 cities, starting from tier 1 till tier 10. Very dejected. They are very frustrated. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you're aware, there are some TikToks which are being made and being posted on Facebook, where actually a travel agent is becoming a vegetable seller right now and trying to put his message across, that, it's time for him to fold shop or not. I know it was time for survival of fittest a month back, but there's a limit to this, in my opinion. I understand the government did not come back with our needs or some package which the industry was looking for, especially for industry, which is almost 10% of the GDP with 9% of employment. So I think that support, if it is not there, we need to get that confidence back of our travel industry. My urge is to our leadership in the various associations who are really compliment of really working hard for the last 45 days and doing their best to ensure, that we do get these packages, but it did not happen. So I think these leaders now need to regroup, get the confidence of the industry, and obviously keep talking to the government. I'm sure something will happen going forward. Challenges now which are in hand, all of us know, even the airlines have cash flow issues right now, but there's a lot of money stuck. Even a lakh of rupees for us travel agents sitting in a tier 3 is a lot of money. Hotels and some global suppliers are still not refunding money back. So I think from all four corners, the agents is kind of getting squeezed right now. Working capital remains a challenge. The moratorium was definitely a benefit, but obviously it's still payable after some time. It's not that it's for free. And if the 12 months moratorium, if you're an MSME, I don't know how many agents will qualify for that. I'm sure some NPAs will happen now because situation is only getting back to worse. Hopefully things will bounce back in October, but I think still feel there's a big 3 months gap still left for things coming back to normalcy. As a company, I think technology will play a very important role. We as a company, basically what we are doing is now try to get more products, where we can leverage our distribution via the technology and ensure that these agents get some other revenues, apart from just hotels and air, to survive in the next few months, and hopefully make these verticals for them to, and for us to be a serious revenue earner apart from the current business, what we do. As Dipak said, absolutely, I think the monsoon getaways, for example, in a state like Maharashtra, many people will start using roads to go to cities such as Kandala, Lonavala, Alibag. I have friends of mine who have been talking to me, let's go to Shimla in June, and I'm talking about some serious customers. So I think next 3 months, it is going to be domestic by road and some unexplored destinations, which as Indians, we have never thought about, which are now being spoken about within the travel agents and the travel community. And I think wildlife, I know Dipak said East Africa is definitely going to be one of the flavors, but I think Pench and the other destinations such as Ranthambore, which is close from us, for example, in Delhi, is, and I remember Dipak was telling me just half an hour back, this is going to be one of his gateways, for example. So I think to get the confidence back, and the worst was we all thought flights would start this week. We saw it in the press, flight starting 18 June, 19 June. We still don't know it's 1st June. So if you ask me, in the last 4-5 days, every news has been very negative. The sentiments are very, very low. I really encourage all my colleagues, even on the panel, who are leaders in their own space, is to get the industry back. All of us are suffering, right? Nobody's getting is smiling right now. Everybody has their own challenges, be it large, small, or medium. So I think we need to regroup, get the energies back. Survival is still survival. I think revival is still away. Still 3 months away. So that's my request, and I think representing the fraternity, my humble request is let's do something, and let's keep the dialogue on. I'm sure our government will listen, and if we can also help all the stakeholders in the travel ecosystem, be it in airline and hotels, to support these small and medium travel agents as well. So that's from my side, Ashish. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankush, for articulating your thoughts. And now we move to Deep Kalra, who's the co-founder and now the group executive chairman of MakeMyTrip. On to you, Deep.
Yeah, thank you, Ashish. And thanks again, everyone. Meenakshi ji, good to see you again. And very nice to be joined by Shreya ji, as well as Sir from Odisha. I think everyone has said enough about the disappointment. So no point repeating it. Time is always at a premium. No point repeating the fact that the industry is nothing short of devastated. And I think we're going to see the worst of that in the coming weeks and definitely in months, but in weeks too. There are many people on the brink. And I know that Meenakshi ji and her team fought very hard. We had sessions with her, we had sessions with the minister, with the secretary. I think everyone was very, very, I think, earnest in putting up the demands of the industry. They believed they were fair, but for reasons unknown to us, frankly, nothing has come. So what do we do now? I think as an industry, we've got to live up to our name, and we've got to live up to our title of being resilient and tough. Many of us are entrepreneurs, and I think as entrepreneurs, we obviously can't call it quits and say, it's time to pack up, although smaller companies will have no choice. I think what's going to really help with revival, and particularly of the domestic industry, because I think that comes first. Inbound will follow, and inbound depends on many other factors. I think bilateral relations between countries, visas, etc. Dipak put it very well. Countries will have their own concerns. But this morning on another session, I was hearing that Goa bookings for winter are already quite strong. And when people want to book actually very long packages this time, but they have only one question in mind: will we be able to come? And if we come in, will we have to first be quarantined elsewhere for 14 days? So I think the ministry has to address that, and I'm sure they're thinking around that. It's a long way off if we think of November, December, but these bookings happen well in advance. Let me focus on domestic, where none of these concerns are there. The borders have technically been opened up. Obviously, it's early days, but I can tell you a lot of people who've been feeling bottled up are ready to actually get into their own car, which is something which I did think would be the first thing. It's the obvious thing. Get into your own cars or a car and driver with whom you feel safe, and drive to a remote place, drive to a place which is either resort-like or it's a homestay, and secluded places like that. Satisfy yourself that the hygiene standards are very good. Do your own bit of sanitizing, everything you can do. People will even take their cooks along, etc., where they can, and then settle down there for a while and enjoy the outdoors without having to wear a mask every time you step out of your door. But what will enable all of that to happen? With states welcoming that, while we have ma'am here from Rajasthan, I think the season now is going to be very hard in Rajasthan, but the season will come back pretty fast. October onwards, people will love to drive down there too. But right now, up in the hills, I think is some place where people would want to go to escape the increasing heat, particularly in the big metros. I think what we need really is standards, and we need one set of standards which becomes the protocol for the whole industry. Whether you're a hotel, whether you're a homestay, what are the basics that you have to adhere to? There could be some incremental standards, and these would be going into great detail around what kind of hygiene is acceptable, what kind of sanitation. Can doors be of the types where people can actually push them open? Can taps in public places be of the kind where you can step on something which is being done, a step pedal, and have the tap operational? Similarly for sanitized fluid, etc., and soap. A lot of these are already in place. We've already put them in place in our office in Bangalore, and we're going to do more. But there has to be one codified set of standards which everyone adheres to, which has obviously got to have the blessings of the tourism ministry. And we're very happy to work with you to put forward some suggestions. Some are being done, and I can tell you the large hotels are all working on these. So the large hotels are working on their own standards. And my fear is we will have 10 or 20 different kinds, and there'll be no common norm. And then again, everyone will be saying, this is a safe place, but who defines safe? So what I have in mind is that we get a Big Four kind of accounting firm who does a regular audit. The standards are agreed by the industry. They are put forward to the ministry, including the states, and everyone blesses them. And then these become the default standard with which people can at least start welcoming guests to come in. Currently, the situation is quite bad, as you know, that hotels are operational, but essentially or officially only meant for international returnees and for isolation purposes, quarantine purposes. However, there are other needs. People have actually got, companies have BCP plans, business continuity practices, where they've taken hotels on long stay for their employees who are living in places where probably it's not easy to work. This could be PGs, etc., but they want their people to work, to be comfortable, to be safe, etc. So they're putting them up in places like this with good connectivity and good conditions. So I think we have to be very clear today that if a hotel can adhere to these standards, they should be allowed to take anyone in. Many hotels are not opening because they can't take long stay guests, although long stay guests want to come. I believe hotels are being harassed by police, even in cases where they've got guests who are actually self-isolating or been told to quarantine themselves and being asked all the time if this is right or not. So I think here today, the ministry and the state ministries can really come in and help, because if the hotels don't start, then the wheels of this industry don't start. I'm not talking about civil aviation out here because that's a different forum, and that has other concerns, and I believe that it will hopefully start before the 1st of June or thereabouts. But let's leave that apart. But for the backbone of the tourism industry, whether it's domestic or inbound, it's really our hotels, large and small. And if we don't do something fast, I fear we'll have many more messages like the one I saw today, which was being shared about a hotel, I think Southern Group, which had to shut down and lay off all the people. Or like Ankush said, really morbid humor about how people are going to have to pack up and, really give up this great profession. So that's the appeal now. It doesn't need money. It just needs proactive work and working in a very coercive manner, which will really help the industry going forward. So that's my only really request right now. I think everything else has been covered by my colleagues, and I look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you, Deep. Thank you for covering this for us. And maybe now move on to Naveen Kundu, who's the Managing Director of EVIC Cash Travel and Holidays. Over to you, Naveen. Naveen, can you hear me? Naveen?
He might be on mute.
Naveen, should I give him a call?
Can't see him on the screen and he's mute.
There's dark. Naveen?
We can come back.
If we move on to Vikram Murdoch, who's the Managing Director of Abercrombie and Ken, and then we'll come back to Naveen when he comes. Vikram, over to you.
I better put myself on unmute. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, FICCI, for having me on this afternoon. As they say in Management 101, we cannot base a strategy on hope. But right now, as it seems, a lot is based on hope, because we do not know where this, as Dipak rightfully said, where this pandemic is going in the West, where our clients are, or more so now, where it's going in India. There are also too many wild cards and uncontrollables that we currently see that is not, that's going to hamper and impede our business. I think about a week ago, we saw a very nice press release by a Prime Minister speaking about revival and tourism and domestic holidays and how tourism will lead the charge and so on and so forth. But very sorry to say, hope is what we had, and that has been dashed miserably, because in our industry, not only have they scuttled any hope of giving us any, whether it is a salaries for employees or any stimulus package, but they also seem to be taking away what we already had in terms of an export incentive package called CIS. So we are actually back to zero. It looks like we're going to be completely on our own, and I don't want to be sounding repetitive, as I know a lot has been said by Deep and by Dr. Suri, and of course Dipak and the other panelists. But I do believe, Ankush, I do believe that something needs to be done to assist. At least I speak for my own fraternity, which is inbound tourism, because as you can see where all this is going, nothing is going to come out of this for the next 12 months. If you're lucky, 10. Now, how are smaller companies, medium companies, SMEs, what you call in our industry, going to go about doing what they're doing? How will we see that resurgence? We are all speaking about resurgence. We are speaking about how tourism will come back. It's going to be a flag bearer. After all, how long can you keep people in their homes? So the moment borders are open, flights start, visas are given. You need to have people to look after those guests who come to India. So you need airlines, you need hotels, you need DMCs or inbound tour operators, you need transporters, you need down the food chain. And I see a major issue on this food chain. Given the backdrop that we are going to come out of, now it's for us to swim on our own, really. So there are a few broad points and I can speak about which are probably emerging out of all this. In the absence of a vaccine, it'll only be the hardy traveler. And I've heard from my own offices, the Latin Americans, the Mexicans, they seem to be hardy travelers. Europeans, the Germans are hardy travelers. There's certain markets that you will see where people are not so hung up on a vaccine and they're okay, open to travel. So we might have to now relook and take a look and see in markets where perhaps we should train our guns and go in and point them in the short term and try and get them to come to India. Of course, all this requires confidence building measures. So the confidence building measures only will be once our borders open, flights come in, visas of course are issued, and so on and so forth. Once this dust all settles, there is going to be a very strong resurgence, something like a V curve in management terms, which everybody speaks about. And I hope we're all there collectively to welcome our guests. But in my segment, luxury, I see first class to luxury coming back very strong 12 months out, if not perhaps slightly earlier. As we speak, we actually have Americans, believe it or not, who put down money in the last 2 weeks on holidays in the first quarter of 2021. Some of them who actually had deferred their holiday from earlier this year in February, March to end of the year are rebooking for the first quarter 2021. So having said that, even in the United States, all is not lost. It's a big, big market. And I do believe you'll find people, perhaps the younger lot, so demographically, psychographically, somebody you might trend down who are perhaps more keen to come to India, and you should certainly look at them. The other big, strong pillar I would see, besides luxury, is the travel agent. We need to make sure in the international markets, we actually reach out to tour operators and travel agents, specifically tour operators, so that they do not drop their offerings on India. Yes, of course, all this depends on how India handles the dreaded virus. But let's, as we are optimists, let's go on the premise that we should be okay. And considering we are the last to be impacted on, I believe, every lakh, we are just about 7 people who are affected by this virus. So the numbers are in our favor. We seem to be doing a good job. Yes, there are pockets where the pandemic has affected more than less. But I do believe that, again, hope is a big thing. So we need to rest a lot on hope to devise our strategies going forward. The role of the travel agent, the tour operator, is going to be great. We need to give them the support. So whether it's in our key source markets, all the tour operators who decide to stay with us, who decide to stay the course with India, if you're not doing anything for the domestic, the inbound, the travel companies, perhaps you should look at supporting them so that they continue to remain offering their holidays for incredible India. As a company, right now, we opened our offices on the 18th of this month. We also actually beamed out messages across the world to all our partners saying that we are back in business. and we are preparing ourselves with the so-called new normal, so that when they're ready to travel, when international flights restart, we are here to look after them. The Ministry of Tourism, I believe, at this stage should be preparing a campaign, an aggressive campaign to deploy the funds that they actually have, they've saved over the last few months, to go back and build confidence with a different approach to bring people back into India. Digital, I know it's part of the questions that were on the up for discussion. Digital will play quite a role in our business. So especially for the luxury and first class traveler, when he comes to India, yes, he might buy a so-called holiday package. I hate that expression package, but if he buys a holiday offering, he wants to see where he's going to stay, what kind of hotel. I believe branded hotels, because they will adhere to a very clear-cut norm of hygiene and safety, H&S. I believe they'll be the recipients of the business. End of the day, I think all is hopefully not lost. Ashish, I'm going to hand back to you. I know there are a slew of other speakers thereafter, and I'm open to take questions.
Okay. Thank you, Vikram, and thank you for ending it with a hope. I am now back with Naveen. Naveen, you can, now we have the audio. Naveen is the managing director of Civic Cash, so back to you. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the system had logged me out. So
right.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Ashish, and good evening, panelists. While a lot has been already said, and what I sort of emphasize now is this is a time to be focusing on capability rather than capability.
Naveen, something wrong with your audio again?
Yeah, we lost him. Yeah.
Naveen?
He's frozen.
Yeah. Naveen? Should we move on to next?
Turn off his video and just try if he better
just
on.
Turn off the video.
Yeah, we can move to next speaker.
Yeah, let's move on to Mr. Rajiv Vij, who's the founder of Cars on Rent and the chairman of Cars on Rent. So over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Ashish, and thank you, everyone. I think the good thing is that that the whole industry agrees that the domestic tourism and tourism which is by road is something which is going to take off first, and you know, the fact that I'm part of that part of the industry feel better. I must say the industry is going through a very serious crisis. Large numbers of drivers, individual owners of cars, small operators, they are under very severe strain. A lot of them actually are also migrant, as you know, because they come from their villages to work in all the large cities and earn their livelihood, give some good education to their children. So they have been facing a serious challenge. And I think therefore for entities like us, one of the primary responsibilities is to support them. The government, I don't know what they will do for the migrant laborers or not, but as far as we are concerned, we in fact have a welfare trust through which we continue to support our driver partners who are stuck with no work, no earning at all, and still they have the pressure of the EMIs for their cars to be paid by them. And I think that stress will remain because the total volume of bank loans that they have is estimated to be almost 80,000 crores. That's a massive kind of amount which these small operators, small single car owners carry. But I think you know, enough has been said about the government not giving support to this industry. So I don't want to talk about it. I think the government is probably more comfortable in reforming some of the sectors, and I'll focus a little bit on a reform, because if the government accepts that this, if at all, whether it deserves any support from the government or not, I think it does deserve some reform in this sector. And there is one reform which this sector has been crying for a long time, and it has become very critical at this stage that reform is given. Because what is happening is that this is one industry where when you want to register a vehicle for a commercial purpose, you are bracketed whether you can use that within the city as a city taxi, or you can use it as a tourist taxi, or you can use it as a self-drive taxi, but you cannot interchange this. And the current situation is impacting different sectors of the economy differently. The fact is that at this stage, it is expected that the business of the aggregators, which have the largest number of cars, will get impacted far more seriously, because these cars are used by multiple customers on a daily basis. Already, I think the government has also banned shared cabs, because there the social distancing is something which is not even possible, and you sit with people who you don't know. But these people who have invested into those vehicles cannot be used for intercity travel. Those vehicles cannot be used for self-drive. And one of the things that I think the government should consider in terms of reform, because after all, this guy has invested into this vehicle. He has bought a liability which he is due to pay to the bank in terms of an EMI. He also needs to earn his earning. And if domestic tourism is where the earning possibility is higher, and then we all believe that that's the sector which is going to grow faster. And within that, the driving holidays, whether with driver or without driver, is what is going to move. The government should at least allow these cars to be used for interchange of cars, whether a city taxi can be used for a tourist taxi or a self-drive taxi, because that is one thing which the government does not need to find any resources to do. And it will give a lot of relief to these individual small guys who would be able to continue to earn their earning. And it'll also probably give, because there is an opportunity for growth of the self-drive industry at this stage, which, even till now, which has only about 10,000 vehicles. But this particular stage, it is possible that with this kind of a boost, the self-drive industry could suddenly grow 10 times or 20 times. And more and more people who would take cars for driving, they would be able to take these cars, and these people would be able to bear their cost of EMIs that they have to pay. And I promote this also because I still have never been able to understand the rationale of making these brackets within the commercial registration. Because after all, if I as an investor invest into a vehicle, it should be my option to use this vehicle for what I want to use. I want to use it for making an earning. And if that earning is available in one sector, it may not be available in another sector. And the COVID kind of situation which has happened now, but other changes in the market can keep on happening. But that flexibility should be given to these investors. So that's one thing I think which will do a lot of good to this industry. The second thing, I think, as far as the self-drive business particularly is concerned, I have never understood, and we have been fighting with the Ministry of Surface Transport, that this whole issue where while somebody with a private driving license can drive a self-drive car, but the car has to be registered as a commercial car. This is a fundamental conflict in the policy. And this conflict results in these cars being stopped at the borders. People who are tourists, whether Indian tourists or international tourists, they are stopped because they have to then show all their papers and they have to then cross that border and they have to pay some different taxes. These are people who are driving this car as if it is their personal car. And I think while the government may want to make sure that these cars are adequately insured, and that should be a condition for using these private cars as self-drive cars, but that is another reform which I think the government should consider. So these are two basic reforms which I would recommend that the government should look at, and the fact that we have some very senior government officers on this panel who are listening to this, so I'm taking this opportunity to share it here. There are two other areas which I think would help. Caravan tourism has never happened in India. And I think post-COVID, a lot of people, when they go with their families, while, yes, they should go into hotels, but a lot of people would want to still stay in surroundings which are their own, which are controlled by them. They can make sure that their caravan is properly sanitized, they maintain the hygiene, they can, as Deep was saying, that they can carry their cook along with them. But that caravan tourism requires some amount of infrastructural support, which will need to be created by the government in different parts of the country. It needs to be created close to the cities where safety, security, some facilities, some food, all of that should be available to these tourists who travel to different parts of India. I think, traveling by road and seeing a country is the best way to do it. People worldwide are used to those means of seeing the countries, and we should facilitate that if we can't do anything else for this sector. So that's the third suggestion that I have. The last one, I think this industry, and we are all concerned, and probably COVID will make people even more concerned about the environment. EVs should come into the sector, and availability of better EVs with longer range is becoming possible. They also can be used for tourism, but for that, on the highways, charging infrastructure will need to be created. Maybe every few kilometers, there should be some charging infrastructure that should be created, because now vehicles have come in which have a range of 300-400 kilometers. But even that, you require, you can go one side, but while coming back, you would require, and you would, for your psychological comfort, require that infrastructure available there. See, as a company, I personally believe that the transportation, car rentals is something which will probably come back faster, because these are still considered as personalized vehicles. We of course are taking all the necessary actions in terms of sanitization, driver isolation, fumigation of the cars, etc., etc. The drivers wearing masks and gloves and whatnot. And I think one more positive thing that this hopefully will do is that this will help in putting some standards into place. Deep talked about the standards for the hotels. I think even this industry needs a standard set of protocols which everybody will follow, so that everybody then gets that comfort that, when they get into a car, these are the set of things that they will find. And, that is something which as an industry we need to provide across. I think those are some of my thoughts, but I'm happy to answer any questions later.
Right. Thank you, Rajiv. Can we move on to Naveen? I think Naveen Kundu can see us and hear us.
Yeah,
Naveen?
I'm so sorry. My apologies. Something
no,
wrong with the internet connection around this area. But so coming back, what I was trying to
say, gentlemen, sorry, I'm not interrupting, but we just need to keep an eye on the clock as well. So
I know. So I'll be very brief, because I think a lot's been already said and spoken about by everybody who spoke. So for all my industry colleagues. So coming back, what I feel is that we are all trying to be future ready. And to be future ready, the question is now of copability and not capability anymore. So we need to be, we need to cope up with what is happening. The recovery, as soon as COVID goes off headlines, I'm not saying it will totally go off headline anytime soon, but I know COVID will be going off top headlines soon, and the recovery will just arrive as quickly as the disruption happened. And I'm very hopeful of that. In all my forums, I've been always saying that the recovery will arrive just as quickly as the disruption happened. It's now the moment for the brands and for the private sector, because tourism largely is driven by private sector in India, to start planning for now and for tomorrow. The future of this pandemic is not uncertain anymore. We all know what the future of pandemic is. And in fact, we can see today. So we already know what's coming. Now, the thing of comfort and convenience is a thing of the past. As Rajiv said, we need to look at the driving holidays. Deep has already covered it. I have said it several times that the first and foremost thing is going to be the thing of comfort and convenience probably is gone, and we need to look at new ways of going across and traveling this country and globally. People will be more focused on wellness. People will be more focused on adventure. People will be more focused on learning as in learning aspects of traveling in the more unique ways. What comes to my mind is that we need, as a sector, we need to focus on a collaborative image building exercise for domestic and international tourism and inbound tourism. Dipak, Deva said that, in the last 10 years, there hasn't been any PR agency appointed by India. Now, I said that yesterday also, and some of you were there on the forum. I said, we need just as we need an economist to go and represent us on behalf of the industry to the government, we also need a PR agency within India and overseas to build an image for our country, to build the future of the tourism. And for that, we all need to collaborate and appoint the agency. I think we now have to learn to be Atmanirbhar, as they said. We just cannot rely on the government. During the NewsX forum also, I said the same thing. The government is not going to do anything, and I'm not looking forward to any help from the government. I never was hopeful. Third year of the industry. So why can't we collaborate? We need to we need to create the image of this country within the tourists of the country and overseas. In fact, the corporates, I'm deeply involved in MICE, and I've been speaking to a large number of corporates and asking them as to how do they see, because MICE is going to be on a coma for some time. People are not going to have large gatherings and large conferences. What they were also saying is that, and most of them said that Naveen, you guys need as an industry to come forward. You need to unite, and you need to promote the image and say, look forward and give you all the aspects of protection and well-being to ensure that you can start your conferencing again. People are already finding it very, very boring to do these Zoom calls. While everybody is saying the new normal is going to be Zoom calls and conferencing through digital platforms and all that, I don't think it's the same experience. Travel experience is an experience which is there to live, to observe, and to experience. So it is not going to be the future of this digital activity is going to be there, but I don't think it's going to be experiential. So people will move on to
voice is breaking.
Naveen, we are losing you.
My one aspect will be collaboration. Collaboration. Let's get together. We are all doing a lot at our own company levels. I think we need to come together at the industry level.
Right. Yeah. So, Naveen, are we done? Sorry, we are losing you, Naveen.
All the people today, I will reach out to all of you. So that's all I had to say. Now we can carry on.
Thank you, Naveen. Appreciate it. Now, what we've been waiting for, we invite Srimati Shreya Guha, who's the Principal Secretary, Tourism, Arts and Culture, Government of Rajasthan, to give the government point of view. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you so much. And I'm very happy to be here today, and it's good to see all of you, and a warm welcome to all the listeners as well who've tuned in. I'd like to start by mentioning that we've been talking for the last 2 months about this situation, and I suppose as an industry, it's not just the lockdown that has affected us. We've started winding down from a long time before, because when it started happening in many of the other countries from where we had visitors, that's when business started slowing down. And we've been talking, and I would just like to first share the reaction of Rajasthan tourism and how we felt that we should respond to this and how we assess the situation. To begin with, we realized that we are in for the long haul. COVID was not a situation that was going to end in a couple of months. It would at least be another 6 months of downturn that we were looking at. And there was no way that we could afford to not engage with our clientele, so to speak, or our stakeholders, because we couldn't have waited for things to improve and then start thinking of a strategy. So the first thing that we did was that we started a Rajasthan from Home campaign, which was to remind our visitors, remind our repeat visitors and people who aspire to visit that this is what Rajasthan has in store for you. These are the things that you love about us. And so then we started doing virtual tours, and we put up a lot of content on our social media handles. We also realized that we are very well known for major events, fairs and festivals that happen in Rajasthan, and people would be missing out on those. There are many events which we had to cancel in March because of the situation. So we started doing online concerts, and we started creating these events which we did online, so that people don't forget that this is a destination which is very well known, not only for its built heritage, not only for its cultural heritage, but also very modern and unique festivals. We realized that we'd have to go the digital way at least for the next 6 months. There was no getting away from it. So we increased our presence on social media, and we keep celebrating every event that happens. For example, World Heritage Day happened a few weeks back. So we celebrated that in a big way. We put up, we highlighted all our monuments, all the beautiful architecture that we have. And yesterday, for example, we had International Museum Day. So we celebrated that in a big way on the digital platforms, because we wanted to remind people about our beautiful museums. We have Albert Hall, which is such a lovely structure. Many of you would have seen that. So we promoted that. So that's how we are going about it. And I'm happy to share that we got a video from Belgium where a group of visitors, they put together a video which they sent to us with posters saying that we miss you, Rajasthan, and we want to come back soon. So that gladdens my heart, and that's good news for all of us. And we've also created some safety net for people who are dependent on our industry, be it the guides, our folk artists, the elephant owners in Amer. So we created these schemes which we launched immediately as the lockdown started, to provide some kind of sustenance, because many of our folk artists perform at our destinations, they perform at our events, and they are in remote parts of the state, so they were stuck and they lacked food. So we arranged some kind of relief, and also we started a scheme where they perform at home, and we put those videos which are self-recorded on our social media platforms, so people are able to see and enjoy those performances which they have been so far. I've been repeatedly saying on every forum that the way forward for us, be it government, be it industry, is really to ensure as many confidence building measures that we are able to build in and develop in this interregnum where we're not able to do too much physically. So we've been working on SOPs. We've come out with SOPs for restaurants, for example. We've been allowed to open restaurants for takeaways. So we have an SOP for that in place. And as soon as in-house dining will be allowed, we will also have an SOP for that. We're ready with that. We've been discussing with the industry, and I know that many of them have SOPs for opening up their hotels when they do. Here, I'd like to mention a point. Somebody did mention that every hotel chain is probably coming up with its own SOP. So here, some kind of unanimity is perhaps required, where we all sit down and evolve a strategy which is acceptable to all, so that you don't have a situation where somebody is going to a different hotel and following a different protocol altogether. We've also come up with an SOP for our monuments, and the day we are allowed to open up monuments, we will do it in a staggered manner. We are ready with every hygiene protocol that has to be put in place. We've got those vetted by the health department so that there is no issue later on. We will also open our monuments in a big festive way, because people have been wanting to go to these monuments, and we've got to think local now, literally, because people are not going to be traveling too far. The first tourism, so to speak, that will open up is people going to local destinations. So we are sprucing up our monuments, keeping them ready, and we will be there with our museums and monuments as soon as we are allowed to. Here, I would like to request all the stakeholders that are here that if you are able to develop these small video clips, which we are able to put on social media, circulate them so that people have that confidence that when you come and visit us, this is the protocol that I am following, you are safe, you are taken care of. So, because I've seen a couple of videos by some, airports, I think, where they're trying to show that when you come to the airport, this is how you will be taken care of. If we have the same kind of videos for ourselves as well, so that builds confidence amongst the visitor. And I think that's what's going to happen, that people will come to the places where they feel more comfortable going or safer going. I would also request, Meenakshi ma'am is here, that if Government of India could take up some initiative of certification, some kind of a norm where we do certification of services, certification of destinations, hotels. So that certification again gives a stamp of some authenticity, some comfort to the person who wants to travel. As Rajasthan Tourism, we are focusing more on domestic tourism at the moment, because we can't be looking at foreign footfall, which is of course a big factor for our tourism till at least maybe the next year. And I'm very happy that many of the speakers have spoken about the tourism and the outdoor space that is going to take off first. So we have our national parks, and we've got many wildlife ecotourism packages to offer. Our heritage hotels, I think, have an intrinsic advantage because they're in remote places, they are family-run institutions. People will feel more safe going to those places rather than going to the big cities or big establishments. We've got very good roads, so people wanting to do driving holidays, we are a very good option. We are close to Delhi, Gurgaon, so we are a very good getaway option as well, and we have getaway options even through the summer. So I'm looking forward to people visiting us as soon as things open up. And I see the millennial really traveling first. So we're hoping for the younger visitor. We're preparing for that. And maybe we need to start thinking about building new products or recalibrating our existing products to cater to the millennial, to the single traveler, to or maybe the events that we've been doing. We do big festivals with huge gatherings, so maybe now we need to think of having specific select gatherings for very niche events, and those niche events could be done at many of our heritage hotels, because many of them do festivals. So maybe they even need to start thinking of putting these festivals online and do it on a digital format so that the continuum carries on and there is no break at all. So that's what we've been trying to do as Rajasthan Tourism, not to let people forget that we are a preferred destination and we are there for you. In terms of the financial package, we've been working with our finance department to try and negotiate some kind of relief. A couple of relief measures were announced as soon as the lockdown started in terms of lowering some bar license fees and deferring the state tax. At that point of time, one did not realize how far this is going to go. So at that point, this was some relief given immediately. But we're still working with the finance department. Meenakshi ma'am, I would like to request because we've sent a letter, our Honorable Chief Minister has written to the Government of India requesting for some relief from Government of India as well. If the Tourism Ministry could take up on those issues on behalf of all the state governments, then we would like to work with Government of India and put forth our point of view across as well. Again, I would end by saying that I think for all of us, if we wish to go forward, then it is for us to ensure that we are able to sell ourselves as a safe destination, sell ourselves as a destination which is willing to welcome visitors and is ready to welcome visitors. And I think that's the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm sure all of us believe that you will continue to carry the baton for the industry like you've always been. And the word relief spoken from you does come as a relief to us. And now I move on to Srimati Meenakshi Sharma ji, who's the Director General, Government of India, and leading the efforts from the center in these difficult times. Let's just pause and give her a minute's thought to acknowledge how hard the government has actually been working while we've been sitting at homes and doing what we have been doing, of course. But thank you, ma'am, for being with us today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, FICCI, and all the industry who has invited me here. So we have heard a lot of things, and most of the things which have been spoken were quite expected, and I can absolutely appreciate the concern which the industry is having. However, I would like to say on behalf of Government of India that all the demands which were put across to the government were very well meant, and there is no doubt that they were considered. Starting with what we could achieve and what we could not achieve and what are we going to do further, I just see we are all hoping that MSMEs to some extent, and then the relaxation of MSME term for the services should have some impact, however limited. I'm not saying that is enough. I'm also not saying that the major challenge of salaries which have not been sorted out remains. But going forward, what we can do, the one thing which we can still do, and I think we are already in conversation with the Ministry of Finance, that what can be achieved beyond the package also. Package is not the, as somebody mentioned, that is not a very good word, whether we are talking of a tour package or we're talking of the relief package. It's not an end of the world, and the state governments have made some requests. So I'm sure we are going to take forward, and let's see where we reach there. There is a national task force which has been made, and our minister, Honorable Minister, has been talking to the state ministers of tourism to arrive at somewhere whatever can be done as far as the some issues of whether they are related to the local issues of relief which states can give. That is being worked on. Some very good suggestions which have come in today's session also is about like marketing. Whatever is Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, its own schemes are concerned, we are very much willing to work everything for removing the COVID-related pain, and which is not a very limited amount. We have, I mean, I'm not saying we have a huge amount, but there is an amount which we can work along with you how to work on that. Starting with whether we are talking of coming out with a marketing plan. What do we market? How do we market? And what kind of products we push? We are already working on some proposals, and we will be discussing with all of you very soon. As you might have seen that the domestic tourism is also on our mind, but believe me, whatever we have created along with all the state governments, and I think I'm happy that both Shreya and Vishal are here, who have been such a good contributor thing, has already received a lot of appreciation from across the country. So marketing, yes, there has to be a message. We are already started working on what kind of message we put across, but I think the time is not really right. We really need to see how the COVID is being treated, what kind of specific message we would like to take along with our global marketing. There is a global marketing agency which we are working with. What message we are going to take there? We have stopped our all marketing as of now on the older pattern, because today all the message which has to go in a new sense. And as all of you have also mentioned, that there has to be a very clear message what to expect in India. So that message has to be there. So our marketing budget is very much there for the domestic. I mean, I'm not so much worried about the domestic promotion. I don't see that really means a lot of money. Domestic promotion is relatively cheaper and the state governments are already on that. However, international promotion has to be pushed because it's a competitive market. The 6 months and the 7 months, 8 months are not a very long time when we talk about. We are very sure that the international tourism will start in 2021, and we are hoping for the first quarter of 2021 in a limited fashion. In any case, our season of the September 2021 is going to be a full season. I mean, we are keeping our fingers crossed, and that should be that. Completely agree with all of you when we talked about that. What kind of there is a need to feel about safety and hygiene. This is something which is on everybody's mind. And actually, there is a meeting the Secretary Tourism is Ministry, Government of India is taking with all the state secretaries day after, where one of the most important things which is being talked about is, do we go for a certification? There are already the guidelines which Ministry of Tourism has already planned and taking the cue from the various people, which we have circulated to the state government. But I think it's a very good idea if the industry is ready to accept a certification. Believe me, tourism is a sector which is completely voluntary in nature. This is the time where we have to say, okay, we come out with a certification which is agreeable, which is the minimum standard which must be followed. And I think that certification, as I think Mr. Kalra also mentioned, will be something which will be really helpful. The first draft is ready, and I think day after it will be discussed with all the state secretaries, and we should be immediately going forward. I like the idea of a third-party assurance also. I think it will be a very good idea if the industry-led third-party assurance, which is a third party, in a sense, accepted by all. It does not have. We don't want to introduce any element of Inspector Raj. Unfortunately, with these kind of crises, there is a tendency to go for further regulation. I think that will not be a very great idea for a sector like tourism. So I think if we come out with a independent assessment of which is also on a kind of some random basis, some very select cases basis can be done, so that create confidence in the international tourists. I think that is some idea we should work with, because I mean personally, I will not recommend something kind of a regulation or enforcement. I mean, that can be a little tough on the sector, which is so diverse, because you cannot have the same kind of a certification for a homestay and a 5-star hotel. I mean, for example. So I think if that is something which we can come. Another is that we have talked about that what kind of message we take across. Kerala has been given as a model. Somebody mentioned, yes, we should take the success stories outside. But I think, again, as I mentioned, let's wait for a while. We are working with our various stakeholders in coming up that how do we carry the message in few time to come. I've also taken some suggestion about incentivizing the tour operators. I completely agree that this is the time we have to kind of engage with our travel tour operators outside India, so that they should not stop having interest in India. So we are looking at a project that how do we bring that. Initially in the champion sector, some of you might know, we were looking at a very few countries. But this is the time we have to expand it, and we are already working with that. How do we incentivize them to keep selling the India? And we will like to have your suggestion on that. So these are some suggestions which we are already working on. We are also looking at making our marketing development assistance scheme liberal. We also want to offer that help to the whichever the states also like to recommend that kind of market development assistance they would like, because these are the things which Ministry of Tourism can do within its own resources, within its own mandate. So basically, coming back to the issues, the issue number one is we keep taking it up with the Government of India, whatever they can give. We are not going to stop doing that. Point number two, we are going to work with you for promotion, especially the international promotion. Point number three is certification. SOP we are coming up. Day after we are talking, as I mentioned, with the state secretaries. And the point 4 is certification if the industry is ready to do that. And I think we are about the opening of the hotels, I think that was a very good suggestion that we should look at the long stay opening of the hotels, because I think that issue has been missed. But I think let's wait for maybe for 2 weeks more, and then we go with that, because I think that will be, government will be more, especially the health and family welfare will be more, open to the idea. I think that is the time we can take about the long stays and opening the hotels for the people who might be coming even for business, because that is now going to start. So I think if we work on all these, I'm sure we are going to go ahead. I mean, I have no difficulty. Of course, industry has shown lot of, lot of positivity, and again, I would say we are all in here together. Let's not lose hope, and please give us a specific suggestion. And we have received some very good suggestions. Believe me, we are kind of going through it, taking it forward there. So please give us suggestion on what kind of marketing development assistance. How do we keep engaging with the foreign tour operators? We are working on champion sector scheme, because Ministry of Commerce has agreed to relax it, especially for the Ministry of Tourism. How do we take it forward? So I think those are few of the things which I am taking from this session to take forward. So thank you very much for calling me here. And if anybody wants to discuss any question, I'm ready to answer.
Right. Well, thank you, Meenakshi ma'am. I think your words have been taken very positively. Although we have a question and answer session, which I'm going to skip due to shortage of time, but there is one particular question I'm going to address to you and then move on from you. It says, what the government can do for confidence building for the industry immediately. What would you like to say on that?
So I think if I, on a very lighter vein, if I can say, I think a lot of confidence has been shown by saying that I think tourism will manage pretty well. But going on a very serious note, the confidence building as far as the marketing and promotion, we are ready to go aggressively on that. That is something we will like to help even in the marketing promotion to be taken by the private sector. So that is one thing we can immediately do. We will also like to work in creating the safe and tourist safe destination. India being a tourist safe destination, that is something which we will like to do. And going forward, we will also should be start looking at something like a tourism fund, because this is something which we have faced very terribly bad, because we did not even have the numbers when we went to the Jan Dhan Yojana or what category. We felt quite helpless in that when we were asked by MSME or we were asked by the Labor, Ministry of Labor, that where are those people? Can we connect them? We unfortunately were not very sure. So I think it is very important. This crisis has shown us that this industry has been seen fragmented. And this is somewhere, I mean, this is, I'm saying it from what the crisis I faced. What is the limitation which I faced at the Ministry of Tourism? That when I had to put up the request, I could not identify that how will I reach down to the people. So this is some challenge which I think systematically we'll have to solve. If we are an industry, we should be seen as an industry. So we should have those characteristics of that industry. So that is the one confidence building. It may be for the future, but this is the something we should learn today, and it could be useful tomorrow. So I think so.
Ma'am, I think your last line should resonate with everybody for a long time, that this industry is indeed fragmented. We need to get together and mobilize things together.
Yes.
I thank you, and I thank you on behalf of our entire panelists to move on. And now I move on to Dr. Suri to help us summarize the proceedings. But before I do that, Dr. Suri, if I may be allowed to thank Manish Ahuja and Anirban Chatterjee in FICCI, who've been very painstakingly working behind the scenes to put this for us. Thank you, Manish and Anirban. And I would also like to thank HAKS, who've been the supporting partner for this event. And over to you, Dr. Suri, for summing it up for us.
Thank you, Ashish. Well, thank you very much, all of you esteemed panelists, and Thank you very much for our special guests, Vishal ji, Meenakshi ji, Shreya ji. A couple of key takeaways that came out from what we've been hearing. Something came about states, and Vishal ji mentioned that states should not compete with each other. And as a matter of fact, states should work with each other. I think that's really, really special, very good for us, because that will boost the domestic tourism. We have to reset our buttons completely. Technology is going to play a very, very major role. I also picked up that MICE may be on a ebb. However, social events and particularly self-driving vacations are going to begin to take a lead. There was Shreya ji, you mentioned that we should do these small videos. Actually, all hotel chains are already doing them, and they are on YouTube. But we could send you some special ones for that. Meenakshi ji, your point about the industry being fragmented. I think COVID has actually cemented this industry. And we may have been speaking on different platforms, whether it's CII, whether it's FICCI, whether it's HAI, whether it's Faith. But COVID actually cemented us, and we all got together. And I think whatever information came to you or whatever requests came to you, there was an underlying, thread that all of us were pretty much asking for the same thing. So ultimately, the requests that came across to you were 4 or 5 salient or relevant points. Unfortunately, none of those points were really actually accepted even. Yes, this would also be a good reason for this industry to be given the industry status. As you know that we are not an industry status, it may be a time, Shreya ji, for us to take this forward, and maybe the Ministry of Tourism can really help us and give this industry an industry status, which would then definitely unite us. So having said that, I'd like to thank all of you once again for being with us. And yes, we are resilient and we will come back. It's going to be a tough call. There will be a lot of 9 pins that are going to fall. They've already started falling. And yet, even though the MSME element that you did point out, I think it affects a very, very small element of our industry, but I'm sure there will be some people benefiting from it, and I hope so. With that, thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining in this. Stay safe, stay healthy. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, our audience.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I forgot that. Thank you ever so much for doing this for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashish.
Thank you, guys. We'll catch up.